What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I'm going to give you the TLDR, or the too long didn't read. Basically, as much information as I can get you, the highlights on what was included in the new expert classes Unearthed Arcana that was released. It's what everybody's talking about right now in the Dungeons and Dragons community. And I did a 4-hour live stream where we went through everything ad nauseum, talked about it, discussed it, reviewed the videos released on each section that talks about previews and things coming forward. So that is here on the channel. It goes over, it does have timestamps in the video description, as well as a pinned comment, so you can go through and click to see if you're looking to get something a little bit more in depth. However, this is just going to touch on the very high level of what's in this document, and then if you want to look for it yourself, you obviously can, or if you want to see my initial thoughts on reading through it for the first time, you can go check out that other live stream. So, first of all, the biggest thing that I've seen come up a lot is expert classes. People immediately jump to the concept of this must be something new for veteran, experienced players, or some sort of new prestige class, or a change to the subclass system. First of all, throw all of that out. I realize up front, starting off your new Unearthed Arcana with the name expert classes might automatically put people on edge, and it obviously did, because I've seen it from a whole bunch of people. Like, what does that mean? It's a classification. We'll talk about it more when we pull up the document and take a look. But essentially what Wizards of the Coast is doing is they are classifying all of the 12 base core rulebook classes, as well as the Artificer, into one of 4 different, what they're calling class groups. Class group is kind of I don't love the name, but it is what it is. So basically, when we refer to expert classes, we're talking about the Bard, the Rogue, and the Ranger, and then also the Artificer. Those that get expertise, because now all of them have that. So again, those are the experts. So when we're talking about expert classes, that's what it is. I'm assuming next may be the Warrior classes, which will be Barbarian, Monk, and Fighter, but we'll get to that as we go through. So first of all, look at this, 98.6. You guys have driven this up over a couple hundred subscribers just during this past week, which is amazing. That hitting 100,000 before PAX Unplugged in December seems very real, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. So let's go ahead and jump over. I'll show you where to get it first. It's only available on D&D Beyond. As you can see here, I went to D&D Beyond, I went to Sources, right, and then One D&D, that takes me here. You can see that this is basically open for playtest till the 20th of October, at which point the feedback survey will open. So I clicked on that, I scrolled to the bottom, and essentially here is the PDF. So what is contained in this document? Expert classes, the 3, the Bard, Rogue, and Ranger. Those classes are all contained in here. These are going to be the new updated classes from taking the 2014 one, kind of taking what worked or what didn't work in the case of the Ranger, tweaking and adjusting things and sort of making them fit the new archetype for what they consider an expert class to be. It is also provided with 1 subclass for each of those classes. Again, these are just revamps of the subclasses contained in the original player's handbook. There's a video out there, and again, it's covered in that live stream where they said in this, over the course of this whole Unearthed Arcana process, we're going to get 48 subclasses to go along with these. As a frame of reference, there was only 41 in the original player's handbook, so some may likely get cut or rolled together into something new, but ultimately we are going to get more. Also presented here are feats. Most of these feats are revamps of the ones that you had in the original 2014 player's handbook. We had a handful in the last character origins on Unearthed Arcana. Those were all level 1 feats. Things that could be taken via a background, things that could also be taken at level 1. Now, in this document, we have level 4 feats. All of these feats that we'll see are, again, prerequisite that you have level 4. Some of them have other prerequisites like ability score at a certain level, but they all also provide a +1 to an ability score of some kind. It's not usually of your choice. It's tied to, usually whatever is thematic for the class. It also means that potentially you may see a version of a feat that you liked in the past tweaked or adjusted here, and it may be less powerful or more powerful depending. We may also see versions when the next Unearthed Arcana might introduce us to level 8 feats, which will have a whole new series and a new power level. And basically what it seems like they're attempting to do is still keep the feats that are here in the general identity of what made the feat special, but at the same time also balance it for when you're able to gain it. As some of you may know, Sharpshooter, Great Weapon Master in the game as we play it currently, starting with those at level 1 will make you potentially drastically overpowered compared to everybody else in the party. But if that came online possibly the way it is now at level 8, let's say, maybe a little bit more in the balance, the grand scheme of things. We also have the full spell lists for the, there's, as you know, there's 3 spell lists, Arcane, Divine, and Primal. These are basically groupings that certain classes will just say, hey, you have access to the Arcane spell list, the Divine spell list, the Primal spell list, what have you, and you can just cast any of, that's the spell list you choose from. Certain subclasses and other things will allow you to pick and choose from other spell lists. However, the full lists of everything from the player's handbook are presented here. There's also been some tweaks. Some spells have moved schools of magic, like say from evocation to transmutation, for example. And then an updated rules glossary at the end, including some updated spells and things of that nature. One thing I will also say that was brought to our attention from one of the videos from Wizards of the Coast is that you are supposed to take the current version of the Unearthed Arcana that you see and use that for your playtest purposes. And the only time you would go back and reference a previous Unearthed Arcana is if that information has not been reiterated on. So, for example, if in this document it has the grappled condition, which was changed in the last Unearthed Arcana, the grappled condition in this document is the one you use, and it overrides, it supersedes whatever came before it. To that point, another huge thing I'll throw out there up front, due to all of the feedback and comments that they received, they have basically canceled the updated crit rules that was presented in the 2014, or in the Character Origins Unearthed Arcana, and we were reverted back. So if you're playtesting these new Unearthed Arcana as they are, continue to operate under the way you've done crit rules the entire time in 5th edition. They've reverted back to that. Okay, so that's that. There's a little bit here about how to playtest, and the fact that, again, I will stress this up front, it is a playtest. That means things may be more or less powerful than they seem. It is also a snapshot in time. We still don't know what the other classes are going to look like. We don't know what other spells, other feats, the ways they possibly may even change equipment going forward, the way medium armor, weapons, any of that stuff could all be changed in a future Unearthed Arcana. So consider that. That possibly what we're seeing now may have implications to the things coming later. All right. First up, again, as I mentioned, these are the 4 groups, as you can see here: Expert, Mage, Priest, Warrior. An Expert is Bard, Ranger, Rogue, who are people that have expertise and grab aspects from other classes. Mages is Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard. They use arcane magic, focusing on utility and destruction. Priests are Cleric, Druid, Paladin. Stewards of divine or primal magic, focusing on healing, utility, and defense. And then Warrior is Barbarian, Fighter, Monk. Masters of combat who can deal and endure many wounds. They also reference here that the Artificer is also considered an expert, but does not get an update here, as again, we are focusing primarily on the 2014 Player's Handbook. They also go on to say a couple of things, that the subclasses, they basically provide one for each of the new classes or the updated classes here. They do tell you that it is okay. You can use subclasses that exist outside of the ones presented here, whether from the Player's Handbook, Tasha's Cauldron, Xanathar's Guide, what have you. But there's differences in the way subclass levels progress. They say basically follow the subclass progression of the pre-existing class. In some cases, that's a buff potentially. In other cases, it may be a nerf. We'll have to see how that goes in practice. All right, moving on down the line. So, Bard. I'm not going to go through everything in detail, but a couple of things that have been changed to every spellcaster presented in this book. So that means the Bard and the Ranger. They now prepare their spells. This means we no longer have to deal with spells known, but we also don't have an arbitrary number of spells prepared, like your character level plus your associated modifier. You now can prepare the number of spells, the spell slots that you're used to seeing, that you see on the screen here, that we've seen since 2014. That is also the number of spells that you can prepare. So at first level, you can prepare 2 first level spells, and you have 2 first level slots. Down here at 10th level, you can prepare 4 first level spells with 4 first level slots, then 3, 3, 3, 2. So you're locked in, so you couldn't basically stack up a ton of 9th level spells, let's say. Even though you can only ever cast one, you can't learn or prepare more than one. That is also changeable on a long rest, as are cantrips. So you can prepare your cantrips as well, and then again, those are all swappable on a long rest. So a lot more utility there. A lot of the features of the Bard remain relatively the same. A small change is they did switch armor proficiency is now referred to as armor training. The thought process behind this was every time something is referred to as a proficiency for you, you add your proficiency bonus to it. For example, if you're proficient in dexterity saving throws, it's your dexterity plus proficiency bonus. If you're proficient in a certain weapon, it adds the associated modifier plus your proficiency bonus, and so on. You'll also see throughout here a lot of suggestions. For example, the skills, it'll give you 3 suggestions first, right? Deception, performance, persuasion, or any 3 skills of your choice. But they've done that in a lot of aspects where they give you the suggestions and then also tell you, or, pick whatever you like. Starting equipment has been changed to follow the same suit as the starting equipment from a background, where you can choose what they present you as an option, as a possible, example, or you could just take an amount of gold associated with your class, combine that together with your background, and choose from there. Multi-classing is not a variant rule. It is now baked into the classes. As you can see here, it pretty much follows the same multi-class stipulations as well as benefits that we saw again in the player's handbook. Okay, and that's pretty much the high-level thing. Just going over some high-level things for Bard. Bardic Inspiration has been changed to now be a reaction when someone fails something, as opposed to you handing it out ahead of time. The uses is now proficiency bonus as opposed to charisma modifier. It does still scale as it did previously, but you can also use it to heal when someone takes damage. So that's a nice thing. As far as the spellcasting goes, Bards are limited to the arcane spell list. However, they are limited in the schools they can pick from. Divination, enchantment, illusion, or transmutation are the magic schools they can choose. That seems a little odd to me, but it is what it is. Again, you'll notice that most of the spells that are on those 4 spell schools from that spell list pretty much equates to the initial Bard spell list that you're used to. No more Song of Rest, no more Counter Charm. Those are gone. Counter Charm never was really useful anyway, so I don't mind. Short rests are still present, so we know we were speculating they might get rid of short rests. Those are still here. Bonus actions are also still present, so no major changes there. Bards now get, as a base class feature, a bunch of healing spells auto-prepared that doesn't count against their number of Bards spells prepared. And then they have standardized subclass features. All classes, at least in this document, get their subclass features at 3, 6, 10, and 14. For those of you who played a Bard, you know that's a benefit, because typically your subclass for a Bard only give you 3 subclass features, where everybody else got at least 4 or more. The use of ability score improvement on the tables for the classes has been removed in favor of feats. So now any level that you would have gotten an ability score improvement previously, it now states feat. So 4, 8, 12, so on, because they have made ability score improvement a feat that you can take as many times as you want. So kind of baking feats into the main core of the game. At level 4, you could take a feat of any kind. One of those feats happens to be ability score improvement, which functions exactly like it did in 2014. +2 to 1 ability score, or +2 to, or +1 to 2 others, not to exceed 20. Jack of all trades pretty much remains the same, just bumped up at a higher level. Font of Inspiration, again, changes your Bardic Inspiration to a long rest, from a long rest to a short rest. It also has a nice feature that you can get it back if somebody rolls a 1 on the die. Obviously, you get Expertise. I glanced over that, but that's kind of a main feature there. Magical Secrets has changed. It now gives you access to either the full Arcane spell list, full Divine spell list, or full Primal spell list. You pick, again, once at 11, once at 15. You choose, and then 2 of the spells on that list of things you can prepare can be from that list. Not level locked, not specific spell locked. You can swap it on a long rest. Superior Bardic Inspiration comes in at 18, and then 20th level is an epic boon. I should also say there are epic boon feats contained within this document as well. They took a lot of the things that were contained, again, in the Dungeon Master's Guide listed as epic boons, turned them into feats. Some of them, pretty much all of them, got a reworking in some way. Some are definitely better than others. They also present a example here, right? They're saying take the epic boon of luck feat or another one of your choice. A nice thing that they've also done is list out their recommendations for all of your prepared spells that you should have at every given level, from first level all the way up to 20th level. College of Lore Bard also is the subclass that returns. Cutting Words makes a comeback. Basically, just about everything remains the same. The only thing that's lacking is no additional magical secrets now, but the way things have changed, I think that makes sense. You also have a way for people to roll multiple times and choose, and a way for you to deal Cutting Words, but also deal psychic damage. You'll also see that Peerless Skill, for example, is now a reaction to when you fail a check as opposed to doing something preemptively, and then also if you don't succeed, you get it back. Ranger, big updates to the Ranger here. In one, that they get spellcasting at level 1 as well as cantrips now without any subclass choices required. Let's see. Expertise is now a thing Rangers have. Favorite enemy has been reworked to be Hunter's Mark, always prepared as a bonus action, non-concentration, and lasts for the duration. So essentially you can boost up your damage by an extra d6 consistently. They also have access to the primal spell list for their spells. You still get a fighting style. The fighting styles basically remained exactly the same, most of them anyway. Fighting styles are also now a feat, fighting style feats. It also says that you are considered a warrior for the purposes of taking fighting style feats, which makes me think that we may get more better fighting styles at higher levels. Extra attack still remains. They updated Roving and Tireless from Tasha's Cauldron to be stronger. Nature's Veil still allows you to turn invisible, but it doesn't break if you do anything, like attack or anything like that. Feral Senses is basically the same. Foe Slayer just boosts that initial Hunter's Mark damage from a d6 to a d10. And then we have, again, the example spells and the return of the Hunter. They boiled the Hunter down. Instead of giving you multiple options to choose from at a variety of levels, they basically gave you what they deemed were the ones everybody took. In this particular example, Colossus Slayer is the one we're mentioning here. Also, Hunter Ranger is the poorest showing of the subclasses here within this book. It's the only one that doesn't get 2 features at 3rd level. It's a lot better than the Ranger initially was, but it's not perfect. Also, they brought in for the first instance ever of downcasting, in that to level 10 you get multi-attack, which is basically not multi-attack at all. It's essentially you just get the Conjure Barrage spell always prepared for you. It doesn't count against your numbers of spells that you would typically prepare. For those of you who don't know, it is a 3d8 piercing damage cone, a 60-foot cone. Again, Fireball, in my opinion, beats this out in every way, shape, and form, but they gave you the opportunity to downcast it, lowering the damage to 2d8 if you cast it with a 2nd level slot, and 1d8 if you cast it with a 1st level slot. I don't feel like I would ever do that. I guess if you really need to do a d8 AoE damage in a 60-foot cone, I don't know. I feel like this is a poor showing as per Ranger standards. Rogue is fantastic. Most of the things you love about Rogue have not changed, but there have been some additions here. Sneak attack basically functions the same way. Thieves can't get you an extra language. Cunning action is the same. Uncanny dodge is the same. You get evasion much later, now at level 9. Reliable talent basically functions the same way. Subtle strikes is now a thing you get at 13th level. You have advantage, basically giving you pack tactics. Slippery Mind now also provides proficiency in charisma saving throws. Elusive at 17, no attack and have advantage against you. Stroke of Luck at 18. I don't remember if it was always once per short or long rest, but it is now. And then the Thief subclass, massive updates here in what in my opinion, are a lot of better ways. You can take the search action as a bonus action or use sleight of hand. And second story work is a climb speed, as well as allowing when you take the jump action to use your dexterity instead of strength. Level 6 just gives you advantage on sneak attack pretty much all the time. Use magic device. You can now attune to 4 magic items, the potential to not spend any charges when you use a magic item that has charges attached to it. And you can cast spells from spell scrolls, cantrips, and first level spells with no issue. Anything higher than that, you need to make an Arcana check. But between reliable talent and possible proficiency with expertise and Arcana, you can basically almost never fail. And then at 14, you get 2 bonus actions, proficiency bonus times per long rest. Then we roll into the feats. I'm not going to go over any of these really in depth, but most of them, in my opinion, did receive buffs. Some that are that we will talk about that receive what people are considering major nerfs we'll go on about. So, as I said, pretty much everything in here that you might have seen from the player's handbook, like actor, athlete, and so on, now also provide an ability score improvement of +1 to a given ability score based on what is listed in the document. Things like charger are much better now. They still provide, additional movement speed, but when you move 10 feet in a line as part of the attack action, you can add an extra damage to it. I also really like it because in theory, you could move 10 feet forward and then shoot somebody with a bow, and it would do the extra damage. Crossbow expert is mostly the same in that, well, one, it only gives you no disadvantage on shooting in melee with a crossbow because other feats have been given the ability to fire in melee with no downside. And then the dual wielding aspect of shooting the crossbow has changed, but that's mostly due to the way they changed two-weapon fighting. Let's see. Dual wielder, a little bit nerfed in the way it is. Durable, a huge benefit. Durable is a fantastic feat now, allowing anybody to get bonus action healing using their hit dice. Elemental adept remains the same, except now it increases an ability score. Skip the epic boons. I mentioned those. They've been updated. Again, the fighting styles. Pretty much nothing has changed other than protection now provides a -2 to the attack roll as opposed to imposing disadvantage. Grappler has a nice big benefit to it. Great Weapon Master is one that I wanted to talk about because Cleave remains the same. It increases your strength score by 1. However, instead of having the classic taking a -5 to damage, to hit rather, and adding a +10 to damage, it has now been when you hit with an attack, you can choose to deal extra damage to the target equal to your proficiency bonus once per turn, or no more than once per turn. But so that's this consistent damage that you can just choose to activate. You're not wasting anything and missing attacks, but it's not as swingy as the +10 to damage you received in the past. Again, you'll see a similar thing. That aspect has been removed from Sharpshooter. Does not mean it may not come back in a higher level feat, though. Light Armor Mastery also received a benefit in that Light Armor Mastery now gives you proficiency in Light Armor, Medium Armor, and Shields. Heavy Armor Master is also a much more usable feat in that it reduces the damage from bludgeoning, piercing, slashing dealt to you by your proficiency bonus. They've also done a lot of these where, for example, the Keen Mind now gives you the study action as a bonus action. Nice to see extra uses there for different things. People are complaining about Medium Armor Master no longer, saying that one, it gives you a benefit to an ability score, which it did not do previously. It lets you get a benefit of using a higher level dex with medium armor. People are upset, though, because it doesn't specifically state that you removed, you have no downside to stealth with medium armor. As I've pointed out to many people, we don't know if medium armor, when they release the rules for that eventually, will even provide any sort of downside to stealth. So that may be not why it's not listed here. Okay. Polearm Master pretty much works the same, although now the reactive strike is not classified as an opportunity attack, so it will not also benefit from Sentinel. Ritual Caster got a nice benefit in that it works more or less the same way you anticipated it to. However, it also allows one to cast a ritual spell that they've prepared with, rather than using the extended time for the ritual, they can just cast it, as its normal casting time once per long rest. Sharpshooter now allows you to fire in melee range with no issue. Shield Master got a nice big benefit in that as part of the attack action, you can knock people prone. Skulker got some pretty nice improvements. Speedster is the new mobile, and it's a nerf. Spell Sniper also does not double your attack distance with spells, but it does add an additional 60 feet to it. But it's limited to spells with at least a 10-foot range or more. But that's interesting because now that allows Thorn Whip to have a 70-foot reach. It also means when casting in melee with your spells, they don't have disadvantage on those attacks as well. Warcaster remains mostly the same. And Weapon Training is an updated version of Weapon Master. You can see these spell lists here in front of me. I will continue to scroll through these. But basically, you'll see anywhere there's a asterisk, it's they changed the school of magic that it was used with. And the thought process, again, behind that is probably to make things, at least in this document, spells that in their previous things, for example, Thunderwave and Shatter are now transmutation spells when previously they were evocation. And my thought process behind them changing that was probably so that the bard can still cast those spells because otherwise they wouldn't be on the spell list. Also, for those asking, Eldritch Blast does not appear on this list, which I assume means it will be a class feature for the Warlock whenever we get that. Anywhere you see an underline like this also means that they've updated that within this document. For example, guidance has been changed per this document. Let us continue to go on. Here's the primal spell list, which does have it does have Hunter's Mark. So in theory, a druid could have Hunter's Mark now. All right, updated rules glossary. So we have ability checks here, right? It says there's different kinds of ability checks. There are skills. When you make an ability check, the DM determines whether skill proficiency is relevant or not, telling you what ability score, if you add your ability, or what ability score to use, and if you add your proficiency bonus. It says making some ability checks specifically as an action, tell you what check to make. And then again, the default DC for a check is 15, it states. If it's less than 5, it shouldn't usually be a roll. And then again, 30 kind of being the max. Armor training, like I said, is more or less just a change in the name. Artisan tools got an update to their costs. Attack action has, is pretty much how it is. You make an attack. It says you can also equip or unequip one weapon before or after any attack you make as part of the same action. And then also it says you can move between, which is pretty normal. Again, attack rolls, we know the changes now have been reverting the critical hit rules rather back. Barkskin has been updated, the spell, to now be a bonus action and to provide temporary hit points for concentration up to an hour. It is equal to your spellcasting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Whoever you choose to cast it on gets that, and at higher levels you can add it to other characters as well. Climb speed. The only thing that's kind of weird is that in theory, climb speed means... actually, we'll get to that in a second. Okay. Heroic inspiration has been added in place of the previous inspiration rules where if you rolled a natural 20, it gave you inspiration. Now it has been adjusted to when you roll a natural 1, it will give you inspiration. Dash action is pretty much the same. Difficult terrain is more or less the same, although they have added specific rules for what things could constitute difficult terrain, which I kind of like. Exhaustion, which was the condition we had in 5th edition, has now been changed to the exhausted condition. And for each level of exhausted that you have, it gives you a -1 to any attack roll, ability check, or saving throw you make. You also subtract that from your spell save DC. And you die once you hit 11 levels of this is when you die. And then after a long rest, you can reduce it by 1. Again, we saw the ranger potentially can reduce it on a short rest. Expertise is the same. Fly speed, more or less the same. Grappled, pretty much the same as we saw it in the previous Unearthed Arcana. Guidance got a big change in that now it is a reaction to someone failing an ability check. And then you can still add the D4. However, they added this qualifier that once a creature benefits from this spell, they can't benefit from it again until they finish a long rest. I don't particularly agree with this exact wording, but I also understand their concept, and they brought it up in one of the interviews, that guidance is basically a spammed spell across the board. People are using it all the time. It slows down the game, and it's also gotten to the point where some people basically just roll all of their checks with an additional D4 because they assume that they'll just have guidance. Help action is pretty much the same. We covered heroic inspiration. Otherwise, it functions pretty much the same. Hidden is now a condition, which is a big change because it really helps to clarify the way things work. If you're hidden, you have advantage on attack rolls. Attack rolls against you have disadvantage. If you're hidden when initiative starts, you roll initiative with advantage. And again, the hidden condition is ended on you if you make any sound louder than a whisper. An enemy finds you, you make an attack roll, or you cast a spell with a verbal component. Hide, again, is an action. You have to make that DC 15 standard thing to be while you're heavily obscured or behind cover to be able to hide at all. And then once you hide, you are successfully hidden as per the condition. However, you need to take note of what your role was, because that is what will be used to determine if you're seen later on. Incapacitated, the condition has basically just been tweaked and cleaned up a little bit to make more sense. The influence action has been added. This is essentially what we would call diplomacy checks and things in older editions, where basically this is an action to try to convince or persuade someone to help out in some way. And there were a variety of rules here for what their initial starting kind of, what do they call it, attitude towards you, the ability check that's made, and then how the interaction goes. Invisible is now also considered a condition, or it always was, but now it's been tweaked and adjusted to add a little bit more things, specifically the surprise aspect to it. Jump is now also an action that you can take to gain, to jump over some distance here, because this is its own action that doesn't use your movement that you already have. The light weapon property is huge because now this is what dictates two-weapon fighting. When you take the attack action on your turn and attack with a light weapon in one hand, you can make one extra attack as part of that same action. That extra attack must be made with a different light weapon in the other hand, and you don't add your ability modifier to the extra damage. So basically, light weapons, almost identical to what we saw with previous two-weapon fighting, except instead of using your bonus action to make that extra attack, it's part of the attack action that happens. You can only do this once per turn, and it says, for example, if you take the attack action and have a short sword and a dagger, each which have the light property, you can make one attack with each weapon, but don't add your strength or dex modifier to the damage roll of the second weapon, again, unless you have a fighting style or something that allows you to do so. It also is nice because it doesn't use up your bonus action. To our ranger example previously, you could bonus action as a ranger at level 1, put a hunter's mark on somebody, and then attack them twice with 2 short swords, dealing 2d6 per hit, which is pretty nice. Long rest rules are pretty much the same from the character origins on Unearthed Arcana. Magic is the new term for casting a spell. When you use the magic action, you cast a spell that has a casting time of an action, or I use a magic item that requires an action to activate. And that basically is how that works. If you're going to use the magic action to cast a spell that takes longer than a minute, you have to basically concentrate and do the magic action every turn to maintain that. Move is pretty much the same, other than this weird thing about special speeds. If you have more than one speed, you must choose which one to use each time you make your move. For example, if you have a speed and a climb speed, you can use one of these speeds when you move, but not both during the same move. So basically, if you have like spider walk, you can't walk up to a wall and then start going up it. You have to basically move to the wall and then stop. And then next turn, if you want to use your climb speed or what have you, maybe the spider climb's a poor example because it may get around the climb speed. But basically, what it's saying is you can't walk up to a mountain and then start climbing it with your climb speed. I think this originally existed, and maybe this will get tweaked, but I think the concept was sometimes people would have a swim speed or a climb speed different than their base speed. So in theory, if I climbed 20 feet, I used up all of my climb speed, all of my movement, but if I was walking, I have more, so people could kind of get around it. That's my guess. Ritual casting has also been now that anybody who has spells that have the ritual tag can cast those ritual spells as a ritual. Some updates to the search action, slowed condition. Study action is basically a way for you to gain access and information about the enemies you're fighting or other things. There's a table here explaining what you can kind of get information on. There's a whole section on teleportation, which I'm not entirely sure why it's included here. But basically it just kind of goes over how you teleport and what that means. And then again, small updates to the unarmed strike rules here, and that is pretty much it. I'm impressed I was able to get that done in 33 minutes, and I didn't even spend a lot of time going through everything in great detail. So hopefully this gives you a quick rundown, as quick as Ted from Nerd Immersion can do anyway. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. Like I said, I have a full long-form live stream video going over everything in depth. I will also eventually get around to putting timestamps on this video as well. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to attempt to get a chance to playtest this myself before the survey goes up. So when we fill out the survey on the 20th, and they'll likely leave that open for about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month, to provide feedback so that we'll be able to kind of gear up for the next Unearthed Arcana that will come out possibly sometime in October, if not early November. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.